Greetings, Earthlings. You're listening to ADX Files on Paranormal UK Radio Network, and I'm your host, Alyson Dunlop.
That was Transient by Ghost Drifter Official.
I hope you've all been having a marvellous week. We've got a very chilled out and spiritual vibe on this week's show because my guest is the founder of a shop called The Soul Man and Friends in Broxburn, Midlothian in Scotland. And we'll be talking about things like healing, fortune telling, if you want to call it that, and meditation. I'm delighted to welcome to this week's show the soul man himself, Steven Cranston. Welcome to this week's ADX File, Steven. It's great to have you on the show.
Hi Alyson, thank you.
So tell me about yourself and what you do.
Oh God, where do I start? So I am a medium. I have been for pretty much all of my life. For the last 22 years, I've been working as a professional medium, I suppose, if that's what you want to call me. Yeah, we're running this amazing little tea shop in the heart of Broxburn, serving the local community. So yeah.
It sounds wonderful. Sounds absolutely wonderful. And so have you been interested in this kind of thing your entire life?
I think interested would be the wrong word. I would probably say aware my whole life. Everything kind of started from my earliest childhood memory, really. I can only ever remember being able to sense things that other people couldn't.
So is this like when you were a child you could sense things?
I remember being very, very, very young. You know how we've all got one of those earliest childhood memories?
Yes.
So my earliest childhood memory is of me lying in what I think is my cot and seeing lots of people standing round me, and all I can hear is whispers. I know at that time instinctively that these people are not people who belong to the earth. So right through my childhood, I was always seeing and feeling and experiencing things that other people couldn't. Basically, I remember my next experience that I would say would probably be my most profound one was at school. I remember I was probably about 7 or 8, and there was always this young lad who used to play in the playground on his own. And, you know, I was at school in the 80s, primary school in the 80s, I'll say. And I remember this young boy just looking a bit older, you know, older in time. Mm-hmm. He wore like a brown satchel bag and scruffy clothing and that kind of thing. And I remember speaking to him and having like, you know, he was always just at that one place, the wall in the playground, and never seeing him in the school, never thinking anything of it until I got a bit older, obviously. And then speaking to my friends and saying, do you remember that boy Richard that was at school? And nobody could remember him. I believe that he was a spirit boy that I was just interacting with at the time.
But he was physically solid, like you really thought?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that is like in my very young years as a medium, I would see spirit very solid. And then probably lots and lots of experiences after that. I remember being able to see the spirit world in the mirror as well. I had this long mirror in the hallway, and I used to just stand at the mirror and just watch shadows darting about in the mirror. Always quite fascinated by it, and always been pretty much the observer, just watching.
And you could only see them through the mirror?
Yeah, the shadows I would only see through the mirror. I would obviously interact with people who I now know were spirit people in a physical sense, but never knowing that those people were ever spirit, if that makes sense.
I wonder if you went back to the playground, if you would meet Richard again.
Well, do you know, that's the thing. The school burnt down in the 90s and they rebuilt it. So I've thought about doing that, but obviously I think where he would probably be inside the new building. So
right.
Yeah, it's definitely worth. You know, I think that's actually quite a good idea. Maybe going back and revisiting that, and because I do still know the head teacher, which is interesting. So yeah.
And does the head teacher know about this?
No.
Oh, you need to tell them.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm actually writing a book just now, and I'd just been speaking, or I'd just been writing the part of the book about this Richard lad, so it's kind of regurgitating a lot of memory of it. So yeah, I think that's maybe quite a good thing to do. I might actually speak to them and ask.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that would be good, and I'd be interested to hear what came of that. It's interesting as well about you said about the spirits standing round your bed, because that's often, and that they weren't of this earth in inverted commas. That's something you often hear with people who perhaps have alien abduction experiences.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that they were aliens, but
it could well be though.
Yeah. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
So do you have any other spiritual interests apart from mediumship?
Yeah, so I do Reiki as well. We do Reiki at the shop also, but Reiki is something that I'm quite passionate about. It's just another form of energy healing though, isn't it? You know, I believe that mediums are healers anyway. You know, we're just healing in a different way. But yeah, Reiki. We also do tea leaf readings at the shop as well. We are just a little tea shop that people come in, they have their tea leaves read in the shop as well. So
very good. Well, on the subject of Reiki, that's one of my interests, Reiki and all forms of healing, really, as you say. The one's much the same as the other, really. They're just all forms of healing. I'm up to Reiki too. The first thing people probably want to know is, does it work? Now, how would you answer that? How would you respond?
I would say absolutely. I think you don't even need to have faith in it or need to believe it for it to work. It just does the job. It just brings this sense of well-being to anybody who decides that they want to try it, you know. So
has anything remarkable ever happened when you've been doing Reiki or afterwards?
I wouldn't say we've ever had any kind of miracles, but what we definitely do see is people coming in, you know, being in maybe quite a bad place emotionally or physically, and you see that person progressing. We've had many people who have came in, you know, maybe in quite bad places with their lives and needing a little bit of something, you know, 6 weeks later they're very different people, and then from that want to do Reiki themselves, so which is lovely.
Pass it on. So for listeners who don't know anything about Reiki or healing, can you say how it works?
So it's an energy that's passed down. It's passed down from Dr. Mikao Usui, who founded Reiki way back at the turn of the century, and it's basically just an energy that Reiki practitioners are attuned to. Some Reiki practitioners will lay their hands on. You don't always have to do that. You can hover your hands above the patient and just allow it to do its work. Does that answer your question?
Yes, no, it does. I've often wondered, why is attunement necessary? What's that all about?
I think the attunement's the sacred part of it, you know, because that's something that, you know, it's an exchange of energy from one person to another. So, you know, just going and learning the theory of Reiki isn't enough. You know, anybody can learn the theory of anything, but having that energy that's passed down from where it first started, I think is quite a special thing.
Yeah, I have to say that during and after the attunement, there was something definitely very different about how I felt, and within a couple of weeks, there was one occasion when I was on my way back to my mum's house. I was staying with her at the time. Before I had turned the corner to go down to her house, suddenly my hands started tingling and they were heating up. And as I turned the corner, because I hadn't seen this, but as I turned the corner, I saw that about halfway down the middle of the road, a car was stopped and a motorbike was on its side. The man was jumping about and holding his arm. He'd obviously hurt his arm during some kind of accident between the two of them. And of course, you can't really walk up to somebody and say, "Could I just take you over here to do some Reiki on you?"
Yeah.
Clearly, you hurt your arm. I don't know if it was broken or if it had just fallen on it. He was in a lot of pain anyway. But all I did was go over and put my hand on his back and sort of guide him over to the side of the road and ask him if he was okay and things like that. And that's, I guess, in that situation, is all you can really do. But what was interesting, though, was before I'd even seen anything, the energy or whatever knew that somebody was about to need healing, or somebody needed healing. So I always found that very, very interesting. I was doing some healing the other night, actually, at my fiance's development circle, and afterwards, my hands still felt very, very hot. On the way home, I myself felt very relaxed and had a lot more energy and things like that. And so this sort of energy kind of affects you when you're healing too. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I get that an awful lot as well. I'm maybe just finished a treatment or during a treatment, and I always feel that I'm getting a healing at the same time, which is always wonderful. Sometimes I could be, how we all have off days, and life can sometimes feel a bit problematic. Well, usually when that's the case, people are kind of guided to me that are kind of going through the same thing.
Right. Okay.
So, I'll maybe be, sit them down and say, so, what is it that's going on with you, kind of thing. Just really nicely chatting to them beforehand. Usually they're kind of going through the same thing that I'm going through. And when I do the Reiki with them, I feel myself getting that healing as well, which is wonderful.
It is.
So it works both ways, yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice.
See, if I go back to what you were saying with when you were attuned and how your hands had ignited, you were kind of sparking my thinking there. When I was first attuned to Reiki 1, for me it was like being bitten by a radioactive spider.
Wow.
So it was like, I know that maybe sounds a bit dramatic, but honestly, colours were different. Taste was different, smell was different, everything was so much sharper. And then obviously Reiki 2, that was just like a injection of that same thing, So yeah, truly wonderful. I just, it's completely changed my life. So
it is fabulous. As the healer, do you think if you're feeling unwell that it's okay to go ahead and heal someone?
I think depending on what's going on with you, I think if you're in a pretty terrible emotional state, you shouldn't be really working with anyone. However, I would say that if it's something that you can manage yourself, I don't think it's something that you need to worry too much about, if that does that make sense. So I would never work with someone if I was feeling very down, feeling very low emotionally, or if I was physically unwell, like if I had a bad cold or something like that. I would never ever work with anybody. But yeah,
do you think that can pass on to the other person?
That's a hard one, because I think that Reiki does its thing regardless, and I think I'm always very mindful of my own energy anyway. So I'm always very mindful of the fact that whatever's going on with me stays with me, and I don't want to pass that around to anybody.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Definitely. And other than Reiki, do you think anyone can just walk up to someone and do healing?
Absolutely. I think that every single person on this planet has the ability to heal. We're all energetic beings. We all carry that energy of love and positivity with us everywhere we go, and I think that's healing in itself. So,
do you think it differs from spiritual healing, Reiki?
Yeah, I believe so. So I think that I have done spiritual healing as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the energy for me feels quite different. So I feel that spiritual healing it's more channeled from the spirit world,
Mm-hmm.
and Reiki is more of a direct healing. So Reiki for me is almost like plugging into the electricity mains, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah,
Yeah,
the universal life energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh huh.
And
Uh
I
huh.
think spiritual healing's just much softer. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Spiritual healing's more like, come on then, folks, use me as your medium and
Mm-hmm.
use me to work your energy.
Yeah.
Um, that makes
It's
sense.
maybe more subtle, but healing of any kind, it's usually, well, I've usually felt it quite warm and comforting and that, but there have been occasions where it's felt like more of a cold energy. Have you ever had that?
I've not experienced that myself, but I have heard of other people saying that it can feel like almost like a draft.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so
I can only specifically think of one occasion that happened, and I thought, oh, this is different. Usually,
yeah,
my hands are usually warm. This time they're cold, and the energy feels cold that I'm working with here. And I
yeah.
never really knew why that was.
I don't know either. I've certainly never felt it coming from myself, but
Mhm.
I know that other people have, and I would never dismiss it as anything other than just a different way of the energy moving.
Mhm. Mhm. Have you ever met anyone that didn't enjoy the experience of Reiki?
Yes, I
And
have.
what happened there?
It wasn't with myself. It was with one of our guys, and basically what the lady had been recommended from her friend. So when people are getting Reiki, they often see images. Sometimes of their loved ones as well. Sometimes
Mhm.
they'll see images of the loved ones who have maybe passed away. And this lady in particular had seen her son during her Reiki session. So obviously she'd had a conversation with one of her friends saying, I seen my son during my Reiki session and it was wonderful and it felt warm and lovely. And so the lady had came in expecting that if she had Reiki, she would be able to see her husband.
Right.
So the intention was all wrong in the first place. That lady's intent was to come in to basically have a vision of the spirit world. So
And
yeah,
that's
that's
not generally what would happen during a
no.
Reiki session.
No, so obviously that's the only time that we've ever really had someone not enjoy it. The lady
Right.
was quite visibly not seeing anything during her session, and she was getting quite visibly irritated during the
Right.
session.
Right. That's a shame. That is a
Yeah,
shame. No, I knew someone who went to get Reiki and she felt very unwell afterwards. Do you know why that might have been?
I've certainly never experienced it myself, or I've never had anybody who's ever felt unwell, because we always check up on people afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people will get this shift in their energy after it. They'll sometimes feel a little bit unwell, a little bit shaken. But I believe that that's just release. I believe that that's just things coming away that they needed to let go of. It usually shouldn't last any more than a few hours.
I did ask, were you given any water afterwards? Because that's, I think, quite important to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Lots of water. We always recommend that people drink lots of water just to help.
Yeah,
flush
and as it
away.
turned out, she wasn't advised to drink water. I said, well, that might have been why you felt so unwell afterwards, because usually you would be advised to drink water. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Your Reiki share looks really good. I was looking at your website. That looks really good. I wish I lived closer and I would come along to that. But
Yeah,
do
that's
you get
great.
many practitioners going to it?
Yeah, so we haven't had one for a few weeks actually, but we do get lots of practice. Obviously, because of what we do at the shop, we have a lot of customers, regular customers that come in that are Reiki practitioners. So it's kind of growing arms and legs, if I'm dead honest, Alyson. We're kind of running out of space now, which is good, you know.
It is, yeah.
It just means we need to do more.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you'll be opening a second shop.
Well, that's the plan. So hopefully that will happen one day. That's certainly what we're putting out there to the universe.
Yeah, that's great. And you also have spiritual counselling in your shop. Tell me about that. So cards and tea leaves and things like that.
Yeah, so we do. Obviously, tea leaves is the main part of what we do. We do card readings at the tables as well. So we just kind of use our emotional intelligence and figure out what the person needs on the day. Sometimes people feel like they need to come in for a reading, and it's not necessarily a reading. You know, it's more just having a nice chat, a nice friendly chat with them, and helping them through some difficult times.
Yeah, I think sometimes people would rather go to a spiritual counsellor than a psychological counsellor, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that we do get an awful lot of that. You know, we get an awful lot of people coming in and they just need to talk. You know, a lot of the time it's not so much about a reading. A lot of the time it's more about like, let's sit and talk through this. And it's very organic. It's very natural. It's like our conversation now. It just carries on very organically, and the person always walks out the door feeling really uplifted. Yeah,
that sometimes people just need to talk and have an understanding ear. Do you prefer the term spiritual counselling rather than fortune telling?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that we're not fortune tellers. I believe that nobody can tell your future, and that might sound controversial, but the reason for that is because everybody has free will. Mm-hmm. So if we were to sit there and say to someone, you know, in the next 3 months, you are going to go out and you're going to win the lottery, mm-hmm. you know, that person would powerfully attract that energy towards them anyway. Everything that they do, everything that the way that they act, the way they speak, the way they talk, they're attracting that to them. Mm-hmm. So of course it's going to happen. You know, it might not be the lottery.
Uh-huh. Oh, could you say it to me? Say it to me, please.
If I could say it to myself, that would be wonderful.
Steven Cranston, you are going to win the lottery. There you are.
Thank you, Alyson. And same back to you.
Thank you. So we'll go halfsies. We'll go halfsies if either of us win it.
Absolutely.
Now, I was looking at tea leaf reading, which is known as tasseography. It's very posh. Yeah. It's not something that you see every day. You know, I remember my granny used to read the tea leaves, and she enjoyed that kind of thing. And I've heard a few folks saying my gran used to read the tea leaves. It's quite an old-fashioned form of spiritual counselling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely love it. So tasseomancy or tasseography, whatever way you want to say it, but I believe that a cup of tea is a very emotional thing. So you know, a cup of tea fixes the world, doesn't it? You know, so if someone's feeling down, would you like a cup of tea? Uh-huh. If you know, someone's passed away, do you want a cup of tea? Yeah. You go to visit your friends, you want a cup of tea. So when people come in, they have a cup of tea, they're naturally very relaxed when they're drinking tea anyway. Uh-huh. So it encourages them to just pour all their feelings, pour everything into that cup. And it's such a beautiful way of reading. See some of the things that we've seen in people's teacups, it's just absolutely phenomenal. Honestly, I could tell you over the years.
Tell me about that in 2 seconds. I'm just going to say that you're listening to ADX Files on Paranormal UK Radio Network.
This is Happy Life by Freddie. was Happy Life by Freddie. You're listening to ADX Files. I'm your host, Alyson Dunlop, and I'm talking today with Steven Cranston. Steven, so these tea parties, what kind of things happen during these?
Basically, people will they book in online. They'll come into the shop. They'll sit with their friends or their family. They'll drink their tea. Once they've finished their tea, we would go over and we would prepare their cup. We give them a short explanation of what's about to happen, and then we'll sit and read them at the table. So,
right,
yeah,
and so you said that some really wonderful things can happen during these readings.
So,
what kind of things have happened?
So maybe 5 years ago, so I've done tea leaf reading for a long time. But previous to having the Soul Man and Friends, I did have another shop that I co-owned with a friend that I'm now no longer part of. But way back then, we had a lovely lady who is a regular customer who comes into the Soul Man and Friends now, and I'd sat down with her, first time I'd ever met her, and I'd said to her, first thing that I could see was a lady in a martini glass in burlesque clothing, right?
Right.
So I said to her, I was like, why am I seeing burlesque in your cup? And she was like, oh, well, I've just started a burlesque class down in London. So from that, I expanded on that, and I'd said to her, I actually believe that you're going to teach burlesque, and I believe that you're going to have a very successful burlesque school, academy.
Mm-hmm.
The lady now owns one of the premier burlesque schools in Edinburgh.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Sassy Von Class, I think she calls it. But
wonderful.
That tea leaf reading that day encouraged her and inspired her to follow that dream.
Mm-hmm.
She did, and it's something that she has never looked back on. And she always says, it's lovely, it's so good. Equally, we've seen things like pregnancies in people's cup as well. So the amount of people that come in now with 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old children and say, you predicted them.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm definitely. I'm really interested in getting a tea leaf reading. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm going to come through at some point and do that. It sounds like fun.
Yeah, you're more than welcome anytime.
Yeah. And the tarot. Let's talk about tarot. So, do you do that yourself?
Yeah, I do tarot, but I prefer to actually just work with either tea leaves or with the spirit world. But I can do tarot as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've heard saying that it originates from the Jewish Kabbalah. Others say Egypt. What do you know about the origins of tarot?
I think there's so many conflicting stories on where tarot comes from. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure myself where it does come from, but I just really enjoy working with it. I think it's one of the things where it's a little bit darker. Some people can see it as quite a dark thing.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's maybe just the some of the messages on the cards, like the death card and the tower card and the devil card, They could be perceived as quite negative images, yeah. So,
but like out of all the cards, they're only like 3. So I mean, and they don't, and they generally don't mean what people think they mean, do they?
No. So like the death card is just the end of a phase of life. The devil's more like addictive behaviours and that kind of thing. So they're not negative at all. But it's interesting that you ask about the origin, because we were speaking about that the other day, and there's so many conflicting stories on where it does come from. It's like tea leaf reading. Lots of people think tea leaves and it actually started with wine sediments rather than tea leaves. That's where tasseomancy or tasseography started. So,
Oh goodness! I think I'll
yeah.
do that. I think I'll do it with wine sediment instead. I could come and work in your shop,
You could,
and I would do the wine sediment stuff instead of
read
tea.
the wine. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be very popular.
It definitely would be. Do you know, the funny thing is, see if like most of the guys in the shop, we don't drink, but if we are ever out, we're always like peering in people's pint glasses, or you know, out in the local Costa, we'll be like peering in people's cups. It's occupational hazard.
Occupational hazard. I hope you tell them first that, oh, actually, I'm a tea leaf reader.
Well, we never really say, we just have a wee peek, you know.
Right.
You don't want to take away someone's free will by saying, oh, by the way, guess what? You know, so.
Yeah. Have you ever seen anything very interesting when you've done that?
Yeah.
You don't have to expand on it if you don't want.
I think sometimes you look in there and say, oh, well, you know, that person's got a wee bit of work to do, or... yeah.
I'm just thinking, imagine if you looked in somebody's cup or somebody's pint glass or whatever, and you're like, oh my goodness, this person's a mass murderer. What am I going to do?
Well, I don't know what I would do with that, actually.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that, so no.
Well, that's good. That is good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about meditation now, because you do meditation courses in your shop, don't you?
Yeah, so it's more of like a kind of like a drop-in meditation. So we do that on a Sunday. We're kind of rejiggling our times about a wee bit, but we do men's meditation, just meditation purely just for the guys, and that's at 4 o'clock on a Sunday. And then at 6 o'clock it's meditation just for everybody. And then we're also doing one on a Monday morning as well for, you know, like busy mums or people who have just dropped the kids off at school, that kind of thing.
I don't think there can be many places that specifically cater for male meditation. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so over my years like working as a medium, really sadly, I couldn't tell you how many times I've sat with someone and, you know, their husband or their son has passed away as a result of poor mental health. So it's something that I'm really, really passionate about, is to help as many people, but, you know, as many men also, because men are the people who, you know, find it a little bit harder to talk than ladies. That's not to that's not to discount ladies at all, but, you know, I think if we were saying between male and female, males are less likely to talk about stuff than ladies are, you know.
I think that's true.
Yeah, so I really wanted to try and put something in place where, you know, people didn't have to necessarily have to talk. They just had a space where they could come along and just sit with other people who are like-minded and be able to find a bit of peace in this very busy world. And I'm very conscious of the fact as well that a lot of guys don't like music like Enya and, you know, like the plucky spiritual music.
Plinky plonky, yeah.
Yeah. Plinky plonky, that's the word. So I tend to do the male meditation classes to music that's current, that's out in the charts at the minute. And I'll basically just talk them through it. You know, so nice big deep breaths in, allow the music just to take you away. And the good thing about that is, you know, a lot of them are, you know, like tradesmen, that kind of thing. So if they're out in the van at work and they hear that piece of music, it takes them back to that feeling of well-being. And they don't have to put their earphones in and listen to Enya or
Yeah.
Linky Fonky music. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that you've discovered that, you know, men respond to meditation in a different way. A friend of mine is very involved in Stoicism as a therapy, and he finds that it appeals to men much more than to go for, say, you know, psychotherapy or whatever, or counselling, to go for to use Stoicism is much more appealing to them.
Yeah. I can't say I know what Stoicism is. Can you expand on that? Because now I'm thinking,
I don't know if I can expand too much, but it's based on the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, where you're much more accepting of things that happen in your life.
Right. Okay.
You know, so it's working on that, working on your ability to accept, and go with the flow, if you like. So that, I mean, there's much more to it than that, but that's I think the basis of it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that, you know, like from the male meditation, Alyson, I can't tell you the difference it's made to some of these guys. You know, when they first come in, I'll ask them to like evaluate where they are. You know, 0 being you're very calm, 10 being you're not calm at all, and most of them will say things like 14, 17. And they're going out and they're halving those numbers, you know.
That's great.
That's so great. It just makes such a difference.
Yeah. Sounds like a very bonding experience as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because with the other meditation classes that are either mixed or mainly female, they'll all speak, but the guys tend not to speak. It's so interesting. The guys just kind of sit and look at each other, and you know, it can sometimes feel a wee bit awkward. However, it works. You know.
Do they get more chatty afterwards?
Yeah, so they certainly over the weeks start to talk to each other, but
to begin with, they just kind of grunt or something.
Aye, I don't know if I would say grunt. I would probably just look at each other a bit like,
aye, I kind of a flick of the head. Aye, all right.
Aye. I'm not the only numpty sitting here, kind of stuff.
Now, you've got a couple of different levels of spiritual development classes as well. Tell me about those.
So we do. We've actually just kind of changed because for the first year it was kind of like our pilot with spiritual development classes. So the first one kind of is more the meditation class that kind of leads on to that for people who are genuinely interested. But the one that we're doing just now on a Sunday and a Thursday is a beginner's development class on the Sunday. And that's for people who have maybe just got a bit of intuition, but they've not really ever done anything with it. And then there's people who have got a bit more experience on the Thursday, and they come along to that class. But it's very much like a personal development class that also helps them to grow spiritually. Yeah. So, like for the first 4 weeks, we work on energy. And it's very much about like how your energy interacts with other people, how the things that you say, the things that you do, the way that you feel affects everything around you. And it's had a really like amazing effect on a lot of people who have been at the class, because they're finding that their relationships with their friends, their colleagues, everything's improving as a result of it. Which is brilliant. You know, it really is fantastic. And I believe that will make them the very best mediums or psychics out there, because they've got genuine empathy. They genuinely care. They genuinely want to do good work.
Yeah. And is meditation, is that part of the spiritual development?
It is, but we don't sit for long periods in meditation, because I believe that we should all be very present. The meditation is something that they can come along to by all means, but it's not a massive part of what we're doing.
Right.
At the moment anyway, but there will be a bigger block on meditation, because they need to be able to learn to bring their energy down.
Sorry, go on.
No. I was just going to say, for now, it's more about like how they're interacting with other people, and how just to be mindful of their self. So yeah.
What are your psychic floor shows? Because that sounds a bit like an esoteric striptease.
I hate the way that's worded. I need to actually change that, because it does my head in. But do you know, we've worded it in lots of different ways, but I think that's the way that people just understand the kind of thing that it is. So basically it's just a demonstration of mediumship in front of an audience of people.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is pretty much all it is.
That's fine, because when I read that, I thought, a psychic floor show?
I know.
What is this all about?
Remember, we're a year old, Alyson. We're still developing. We're babies.
Are you? I love it. I've seen people asking what the differences are in psychic mediumship. So, for example, psychic reading people, mediumship, contacting and communicating with departed loved ones, and then there's physical and mental mediumship, and the different types of clairvoyance, clairsentient, clairaudience, whatever. What would you say that you were?
I would say probably a little bit of everything. I would say that I'm definitely clairvoyant. I'm clairaudient. I hear spirit more than I see them or anything. I'd say that I'm sentient. So I'm sensing and feeling spirit around me. So it's interesting, because when I'm working, I kind of switch between the senses. It's a bit like sitting drinking a cup of tea. You'll taste, you'll smell, you'll look, you'll see, you'll listen. So I use kind of all of the senses, all of the clairs when I'm working. And equally, if I've got a spirit link there, if I'm working with a spirit communicator, I'll give the evidence of that person. But equally, if I feel that I'm not getting that information from the spirit world, I'll say, I'm actually getting this more psychically. I'm picking this up from your energy. So yeah, I think I would use all of them.
And have you had any particularly profound readings?
Oh God, hundreds. Hundreds over the years. I could write a book.
And you are.
I am.
You are writing a book.
I am, yeah. So, but it's just, honestly, see the amount of experiences that have happened over the years. I couldn't count. So many wonderful things, so many beautiful communications with the spirit world. I think, see when you have someone coming in, and I always prefer to know nothing about people. I'm like, don't tell me, and then when they sit down and, someone who's maybe lost a child, for instance, I'm a dad myself. So, when someone's lost a child, being able to give that person back that love, nothing in this world compares to that. Equally, if they've lost a partner, or if they've lost a parent or best friend, anything, nothing compares to that. So I know that's probably not answering your question.
Yeah, no, I think it does, actually. I think it does answer the question. And you've got future plans, as you said, to expand your business, and
you've got a book that you're writing. So
Yeah.
where is the future going for you, do you think?
So it's my intent to create spaces like this, have the Soul Man and Friends. I would love to have a Soul Man and Friends in every town, a place where people could come, feel that it's just a place where they can come and sit and just feel that disconnect from the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you come into the shop, many people, everybody that walks into the shop, they all say it's like walking into a different world. It's like walking into a different place completely. And then you kind of leave your troubles at the door. And then when you walk out again, you have this sense of well-being. And you can't bottle that, Alyson. That's something that I think every single place on this, even if it's not a Soul Man and Friends, there should be a place in every single community where people can come and feel like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very much missing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if I can do that, if I can help one person every day in every community, that's enough for me. I don't get me wrong. It would be wonderful to have a huge business that helps people every day. But equally, if it remains a small business that helps everybody every day in one community, then that's wonderful also. But I do believe that we are going to grow and grow.
I've actually wondered whether, as people are, not in all cases, but churches are becoming quieter, people are not going to church so much, that they maybe got that sense of spirituality and comfort when they went to a church, but now they're not doing that. So the times are kind of, moving on for some people.
Yeah.
And that is maybe at the root of their dissatisfaction, spiritual dissatisfaction, you might say.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. I think, religion can sometimes be, not to discount any religion, but religion can sometimes be a little bit too structured. I don't know if that's even
I don't
too
know.
many rules. I don't know.
I don't know. Some people will go to church and they won't follow all the rules, but they still, it'll still fulfill some kind of spiritual need within them. And it sounds like your business does the same sort of thing for people who are maybe not into other forms of spirituality, if you like.
Yeah, I would like to say that we kind of encompass all religion, actually. I think that certainly myself, I can take a little bit of every kind of religion. I can take a little bit of Catholicism, Hinduism, Sikh, everything. And I think that's what being spiritual is. It's taking what we need from the world, everything,
Well, before we go, give us your website details.
Yeah, so our website is thesoulmanandfriends.com, and we're actually more active on our social media. So we've got Twitter at the Soul Man and Friends. We have got Instagram at the Soul Man and Friends, and also our Facebook page.
Great.
The Soul Man and Friends.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we are at the end of another fascinating ADX Files on Paranormal UK Radio. Thank you so much for being my guest this week, Stephen.
No, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
Likewise. Another fantastic show. If you want to listen to archives of ADX Files and my previous show, EDX Files, you can find them both on my own website, which is alysondunlop.com. That's DUNLOP.com, and you can also find them on Spreaker, SPREAKER, Spreaker.com/show/the ADX files, and there's a little dash in between the AD and X files. You can find ADX files archives on Paranormal UK Radio at www.paukradio.com, and the show is uploaded every Saturday to Podbean at paranormalukradio.podbean.com. The Scottish UFO and Paranormal Conference 2020 is confirmed now as being on the 6th of June next year. Tickets will be available soon, but make a note in your diary, that's the 6th of